What if Ellen DeGeneres didn't leave the country for the reasons they told you? What if her name was never meant to appear in the Epstein files, but almost did? What if the phrase, "be kind," was never just a slogan, but something else entirely? People have been asking questions for years about the timing, about the connections, about the silence that followed. I didn't care about any of that, not until I was sent to her house. I was just a delivery driver. That's all I was supposed to be. But I went inside and I saw what was in her freezer. Now I can't stop asking one question, not about her, but about myself. What if the only reason I made it out is because I was already her kind? As I write this, my hands are trembling, not from the cold, not from exhaustion, from remembering. Because before I tell you what I saw, you need to understand who I was before it happened. Not who I became, not what I turned into after, who I was. I was the kind of person who didn't look twice at anything, not out of laziness, out of discipline. I was a private courier, high-end contracts, sealed packages, NDAs layered so deep that some jobs didn't officially exist. The kind of work where your value wasn't measured in skill or speed, it was measured in silence. You show up, you deliver, you leave. No questions, no curiosity, no mistakes. That was the rule. And for 6 years, I followed it without a single exception. I had a daughter, 7 years old, gap-toothed smile, obsessed with frogs, not the cute cartoon kind, the real ones. She'd collect them in a jar after rain and name every single one before letting them go. She made me promise once that I'd always come home before dark. I never missed that promise, not once. I tell you that because you need to understand what I had to lose, what was waiting for me on the other side of every job, what I was protecting every time I kept my head down and my mouth shut. I wasn't reckless. I wasn't curious. I was careful, which is exactly why the request didn't make sense, and I took it anyway. It came through the same encrypted channel I always used. Minimal information, job ID, payout, instructions. The payout stopped me. Not outrageous, but higher than it should have been for a standard drop, enough to make me read the details twice instead of once. Location, Montecito. Client, Ellen DeGeneres. I remember the exact feeling when I saw the name. Not surprise, familiarity. And that was the problem. No assistant listed, no security contact, no intermediary, just her name sitting there like it was the most normal thing in the world. Something about it felt stripped, too clean, like a room that's been wiped down. I should have trusted that. But the money was good, and I'd done this hundreds of times, and nothing, not once, not ever, had gone wrong. So I accepted. The final instruction loaded a few seconds later. Leave the package at the door. No contact required. Standard. Then the second line appeared. If the door is open, walk in and place the package on the kitchen counter. I read it once, then again, then a third time, slower. It wasn't the words that bothered me. It was the absence of hesitation in them. No qualifier, no explanation, no boundary. Just walk in, like the decision had already been made for me. I almost backed out. My finger hovered over the decline button for longer than I'd like to admit. But then I did what I always did. I rationalized. Privacy protocol. Pre-cleared access. Celebrities operate differently. I'd told myself versions of that story 100 times. So I confirmed the job, and it locked in. The package was small, sealed, no markings, light enough to carry with one hand, but dense in a way that felt deliberate. The kind of weight that tells you something matters without telling you what. I picked it up just after sunrise the next morning. Sky was clear, roads were empty. Everything about the day felt exactly like every other day. That's the part I keep coming back to. There was no warning, no shift in the air, no instinct firing, no moment where the world paused and gave me a chance to reconsider. Just another morning. I loaded the package into the passenger seat and started driving. For the first hour, everything was routine. Traffic was light, GPS was steady. The same quiet rhythm I'd spent 6 years getting comfortable in. Then, somewhere around the halfway point, something changed. Not dramatically, not in any way I could point to. It was more like a pressure, subtle, creeping in from the edges. The roads got quieter, not empty, just quieter than they should have been. Less movement, less sound, like the world was slowly turning its volume down. I checked my phone. 1 bar, then 2, then back to 1. I kept checking it, over and over, like I was waiting for something to interrupt the drive and give me a reason to turn around. Nothing did. The property came into view slowly. Long driveway, high hedges, the kind of privacy that stops looking like a preference and starts looking like a requirement. I slowed as I approached the gate, and that's when I saw it. The gate was already open, not responding to my arrival, not swinging open as I pulled up, just open, still, waiting. I scanned the entrance out of instinct. No guard, no camera movement, no visible system, nothing. At that level of wealth, there is always something, always someone, a presence, a layer of protection you can feel even when you can't see it. Here there was only silence. I sat with the engine running, hands on the wheel. And for the first time in 6 years of doing this job without flinching, I thought about my daughter, about the promise I made her, about the frogs she named and released, about how she always let them go. I should have done the same, but I didn't. I drove in. The first thing I noticed when I stepped inside was how quiet it was. Not normal quiet, not the kind you get in a large house when no one's home. This was different. It felt controlled, like the silence itself was being held in place. I stood just inside the doorway for a few seconds, waiting for something. Footsteps, movement, a voice, anything that would make it feel like I wasn't alone in there. Nothing came. I looked back over my shoulder. My car was still where I left it, engine running, faint vibration carrying through the air behind me. For a second, I thought about going back, setting the package down right there at the entrance and leaving. No one would have known the difference. No one would have said anything. But then I remembered the instruction. If the door is open, walk in. So I did. The interior was exactly what you'd expect from a place like that. Clean lines, neutral colors, expensive without trying to look expensive. But something was missing. It took me a moment to realize what it was. There were no signs of life, no photos, no clutter, no half-finished anything. It didn't look lived in. It looked arranged, like a set. Every surface was perfect, every object placed with intention. Even the air felt different, cooler than outside, but not in a natural way. It didn't drift or circulate. It just stayed. I shifted the package in my hand and stepped further in, my footsteps sounding louder than they should have against the floor. Each step echoed slightly, too slightly, like the house was absorbing the sound before it could fully travel. That's when I noticed the cameras. Small, subtle, positioned high in the corners where most people wouldn't think to look. I stopped walking, looked directly at one of them. It didn't move. No light, no visible indicator it was on. But I knew better. Places like this don't leave anything unwatched. I told myself it didn't matter. I wasn't doing anything wrong, just finishing the job. Still, I lowered my gaze and kept moving. The layout led naturally toward the back of the house. Open space, wide transitions between rooms, everything guiding you forward without needing signs or directions. And then I saw it, the kitchen. Bright, clean, larger than most apartments I'd been in, and empty. I stepped inside slowly, scanning the space. Still no one. No sound, no movement. Just that same held silence. I walked to the counter and placed the package down exactly where the instructions said. Centered, visible, impossible to miss. And for a moment, that should have been it. Job done. Walk out. Leave. Forget about it. But I didn't move because something else caught my attention, the refrigerator. At first, it didn't seem like anything, just a standard high-end unit built into the wall, flush with the cabinets. But the door wasn't fully closed, just slightly open. Barely enough to notice. A thin line of cold air slipping out into the room. I stared at it for a second, then looked away. It wasn't my business. That was the rule. Don't look. Don't question. Don't stay longer than necessary. I knew that. I'd built my entire career on that. So I turned toward the exit. Took one step, then stopped. Because something in my head didn't let it go. It wasn't curiosity exactly. It was tension, like something unresolved, something that didn't fit. I glanced back at the fridge, still open, still silent, still waiting. I told myself I was just making sure everything was secure. That's how I justified it. One quick check, then I'd leave. That's it. I walked back toward it slowly, each step feeling heavier than it should have. My hand hovered near the door for a second before I touched it. Cold, not just cool. Cold enough that it felt unnatural against my skin. I pulled it open. Inside, everything was arranged perfectly. Rows of glass vials lined the shelves, each one identical in size and shape. Clear glass, sealed tops, dark red liquid inside. Not thick, not thin, just still. I leaned in slightly without realizing it. There were more than I expected. Too many to count at a glance, each one placed with exact spacing like they'd been measured. Organized, preserved, and labeled. I focused on the nearest one, small white tag, clean lettering, one word, perfection. I felt something shift in my chest, not fear, not yet, just confusion. I reached out slightly, not touching it, just getting closer. There were dozens of them, all the same, all labeled the same way. Perfection. I pulled my hand back, took a step away from the fridge, trying to make sense of it. Supplements, medical storage, some kind of experimental treatment. I'd seen stranger things in this line of work. At least, I told myself I had. But something about it didn't sit right. It was too clean, too deliberate, too important. I closed the fridge slowly, the soft seal locking back into place with a quiet click. And that should have been the end of it. It should have been enough. But it wasn't. Because as I turned away, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. On the far side of the kitchen, set slightly back into the wall, was another door, different from the others, heavier, reinforced, not part of the design, part of the function, and I could hear it, faint, almost unnoticeable, a low, steady hum. I stood there, staring at it longer than I should have. Every instinct I had told me the same thing. Leave. Now. Don't look. Don't open it. Just walk out. But my body didn't move, because deep down, I already knew what that door was. I just didn't want to say it. I took a step toward it. Slow. Careful. Like moving too fast would change something. The hum grew slightly louder as I got closer. Not aggressive. Not mechanical in a way I could place. Just constant. Alive, almost. I stopped in front of the door. Close enough to feel the cold leaking from the edges. My hand lifted before I could stop it, hovering over the handle. Every second stretched. Longer than it should have been. Heavier than it should have felt. And in that moment, I had one last chance to walk away. To leave everything exactly where it was. To forget what I'd seen. To go back to who I was before I stepped inside that house. But I didn't. My hand closed around the handle. And slowly, I pulled it open. The cold hit me first. Not gradually. Not like stepping into an air-conditioned room. It was immediate, sharp, heavy, like the air inside had weight to it. The sound from the house behind me disappeared. Not faded, gone. Swallowed the second the door opened wide enough. For a moment, I just stood there, hand still on the handle, not stepping in, not stepping back, because something inside me already understood. This was the line. Everything before this, the silence, the cameras, the vials, that was discomfort. This was different. This was something I wasn't meant to see. I stepped inside anyway. One step, then another. The floor was smooth, clean, slightly damp with a thin layer of frost near the edges. The space was larger than I expected. Not a household freezer, industrial, purpose-built, organized. That word kept coming back to me. Organized, like everything in that house. Nothing random, nothing accidental. Everything placed exactly where it was supposed to be. The walls were lined with shelves, metal, cold enough that they reflected a dull, distorted version of me as I moved past them. And on those shelves were packages, vacuum sealed, clear plastic, tight, precise. I moved closer to the nearest one, slowly, like getting too close too fast would make it real in a way I wasn't ready for. At first, my brain tried to process it the easy way. Meat. That's what it looked like. Cuts, portions, stored cleanly. But the longer I looked, the harder that explanation became. The shape was wrong, not completely. Just enough. The angles didn't match anything I'd seen in a store. Too symmetrical in some places, too deliberate. I swallowed, took another step closer, and that's when I saw the label. A small white tag, clean, printed. One word, Twitch. I stared at it longer than I should have, waiting for it to mean something else, for my brain to correct it, to turn it into something harmless. A brand name, a joke, anything. But it didn't change. It stayed exactly what it was. Twitch. I shook my head slightly, like that would reset something, like I'd misread it. So I looked at the next one, another package, another label. And something dropped in my chest, hard. Not a thought, not a realization, a feeling, like my body understood something before my mind could catch up. I stepped back, just one step, but it felt like the entire room shifted with it. Because now, I wasn't just looking, I was seeing. There were more, not just two, rows, each one sealed, each one labeled. Different names, same precision, same care. I turned slightly, scanning the shelves faster now, my breathing changing without me noticing. This wasn't storage, it wasn't random. It was cataloged, preserved, curated. No, the word slipped out before I could stop it. Quiet, weak, useless. Because the moment I said it, I knew it didn't matter. The door closed behind me, soft, controlled, final. I didn't hear footsteps, didn't hear movement, but I felt it. That shift in the air when you're no longer alone. I turned slowly, and she was already there. Ellen stood just inside the doorway. No rush, no surprise. Like she'd been there the entire time, watching. Her expression was calm, composed, exactly the way you've seen it before. But stripped of context, it didn't look friendly anymore. It looked empty. She tilted her head slightly, studying me. And then she spoke. Be kind. Her voice was soft, measured, familiar, too familiar. For a second, it almost worked. Almost grounded me, like hearing something normal in a place that wasn't. I swallowed, tried to steady myself. What is this? My voice sounded smaller than I expected, tighter, like it didn't belong to me anymore. She didn't answer, just took a slow step forward, still watching me, still calm. Be kind. The second time, it felt different, not louder, not sharper, but heavier. like the words carried something with them, something I couldn't quite place. I glanced back at the shelves, at the labels, at the shapes I didn't want to fully understand. "What is this?" I asked again, louder now. "What am I looking at?" She smiled. And that's when something shifted. It wasn't dramatic, not at first, just off. The edges of it stretched a little too far, held a little too long, like it wasn't reacting to anything, like it was placed there. "No," she said softly. A pause, then, "Not be kind." Another step forward, closer now. Close enough that I could feel the temperature change between us. "Be." A slight tilt of her head, eyes locked on mine, unblinking. "Our kind." The words settled into the room differently. They didn't fade. They stayed, hung there, heavy. My grip tightened around the handle of the nearest shelf without realizing it. "What does that mean?" She didn't look at the shelves, didn't acknowledge anything around us. Just me. Only me. "A better kind," she said. Soft, certain, refined. Another step. Curated. Her smile widened again, just slightly, but enough. "We don't waste," she continued, almost conversational now, like explaining something simple, something obvious. "We preserve." My heart started to race, fast, loud enough that I could hear it in my ears. "Stay back." The words came out automatically. I didn't even remember reaching for it, but the knife was in my hand, small, useless, shaking. She looked at it, then back at me, and laughed. At first, it was quiet, barely more than a breath. Then it grew, not loud, not wild, but wrong, like it didn't belong to the moment, like it didn't belong to her. "Our kind," she said it softly, almost to herself. "Our kind." Another step, closer. "Our kind." I backed up instinctively, my shoulder brushing against the cold metal behind me. No space left. Nowhere to go but past her. She stopped just a few feet away, close enough that I could see everything, every detail, every movement. And for the first time, I noticed something I hadn't before. Her eyes, not empty, not dark, but focused in a way that didn't feel human, like she wasn't looking at me. Not really, like she was looking through me. Her head tilted slightly again, that same unnatural curiosity. And then she asked, "Are you my kind?" I don't remember deciding to run. That's the part that still bothers me. People think survival feels sharp, clean, like instinct suddenly takes over and everything becomes clear. It doesn't. It feels broken. Your body moves before your mind does. Your thoughts splinter. Time loses shape. And whatever part of you used to feel in control just disappears. One second I was standing there with that knife shaking in my hand, staring at her smile, listening to her say those words over and over again. "Our kind, our kind, our kind." And the next, I moved, not forward, not with any courage, just sideways, fast, desperate. I pushed off the metal shelf, nearly slipping as my shoes skidded on the frozen floor, and lunged for the opening beside her. The knife was still in my hand, but I wasn't thinking about using it. I was thinking about air, distance, light, anything that wasn't that room. For a second, I thought she'd grab me. I felt certain of it. Certain I'd feel her hand on the back of my neck or hear her laugh right behind my ear. But nothing touched me. I stumbled past her, shoulder clipping the edge of the door frame, and almost went down right there. My palm slammed against the wall hard enough to jar my wrist, pain shooting up my arm, but I caught myself and kept moving. The kitchen blurred, white counters, stainless steel, clean surfaces flashing past me like broken pieces of a dream. Behind me, I could still hear her voice, not yelling, not chasing, just speaking. Calm, clear, close enough that it didn't make sense. "Be kind." I hit the hallway and nearly lost my footing again. The house felt different now, longer, wider, wrong in a way it hadn't a minute earlier. Like the rooms were stretching around me, like the distance to the front door had doubled while I wasn't looking. I turned too fast through the entry and slammed into a narrow table I hadn't even noticed on my way in. Something ceramic hit the floor and shattered. The sound cracked through the silence so violently it made my chest tighten. Still no one came, no staff, no security, no voice asking what was wrong. That terrified me more than if they had, because in that moment, with my breath tearing out of me and my heart hammering so hard I could taste metal in the back of my throat, I understood something I hadn't wanted to understand before. The house wasn't empty. It was obedient. I reached the front door, half expecting it to be closed now, locked, gone, anything but open. But it was still there, still half open, still waiting, exactly the way it had been when I arrived. I burst through it and ran for my car. I don't remember dropping the knife, but I must have, because by the time I reached the driver's side, my hand was empty. My fingers were so numb, I could barely get them around the handle. I yanked the door open, threw myself inside, and slammed the lock down before I even pulled my other leg fully in. Then I just sat there, panting, hands shaking so violently I couldn't get the key turned. I looked up. The front door of the house was still open, and in the doorway, she was standing there, not running after me, not waving, not calling for help, just watching. Her posture was relaxed, almost gentle. From that distance, in the afternoon light, she could have looked normal to anyone else, familiar, harmless, like a woman standing at her front door, waiting for a guest to leave. But I knew better, because even from where I sat, through the windshield, through the blur of my own panic, I could still see her mouth moving. I couldn't hear her anymore, but I knew what she was saying. I finally got the car into gear and pulled away too fast, tires spitting gravel as I turned out of the drive. I didn't look back after that. Not at first. I just drove. Too fast. Too hard. Barely breathing. The road out felt endless. Every turn looked unfamiliar, even though I'd just come in that way. My hands slipped on the steering wheel because my palms were slick. I wiped them on my jeans at a stop sign I barely obeyed and realized they weren't slick with sweat. They were wet from the frost on the freezer door. That hit me harder than anything. That cold, still on me. Proof. I drove for maybe 20 minutes before I pulled over. Or maybe it was 40. I don't know. I stopped in the parking lot of a gas station off a 2-lane road and just sat there with the engine running and my chest rising too fast. People moved in and out of the store a few yards away, living ordinary lives under fluorescent light. And I remember staring at them, thinking how impossible it was that the world was still moving. That somewhere someone was buying chips, that a kid was laughing by the ice machine, that everything hadn't stopped. I looked down at my phone, 3 missed calls, no number, no voicemail. I don't know why that scared me as much as it did. Maybe because I hadn't heard it ring. Maybe because I knew, somehow, that no one I actually knew would be calling me from a blocked number 3 times in a row. A 4th call came in while I was staring at the screen. No caller ID. I let it ring. Then stop. A text followed a few seconds later. No message, just a blank notification. When I opened it, there was nothing there. No words, no attachment, just an empty thread from an unknown sender. I deleted it immediately, then turned the phone off. I wish I could tell you that was the last strange thing that happened. It wasn't. For the first 2 nights, I told myself I was overreacting. That I'd seen something horrible, yes, but something explainable. Something rich people paid to keep quiet. Something I had accidentally stepped into and could step back out of if I just kept moving and never said a word. Then I started noticing the same black SUV, not always close, not always obvious, but enough. At a light, across a parking lot, reflected in the dark glass of a storefront after I passed it. Once could be coincidence, twice maybe. By the 5th time, it wasn't. So I stopped going home. I started sleeping in my car, then in motels, then in rest stops when I had to. I paid cash when I could. I stopped using the same road twice. I stopped logging into anything that could place me somewhere specific. And the whole time, one thought kept circling back, not what I saw, not even her, but the way she looked at me before I ran, like she wasn't surprised, like she wasn't angry, like she was evaluating something. That's the part I can't shake. Because if I had truly seen something I was never meant to see, why let me leave? Why not stop me? Why not call someone? Why just stand there smiling like she already knew what would happen next? I've asked myself that question every day since, and I think I know the answer now. I don't think she let me go because I escaped. I think she let me go because, to her, I wasn't gone. Not really. Maybe that's what this has all been. Maybe that's why I can still hear her voice some nights, when I'm almost asleep. Why I wake up with my jaw locked and my teeth aching like I've been clenching them for hours. Why every time someone says those two words now, even casually, even joking, I feel something cold move through me. Yesterday, I was standing in line at a grocery store in a town she's never been to. At least, not as far as I know. An older woman in front of me dropped her card. The cashier picked it up, smiled, and handed it back. And then she said it. Be kind. Normal voice, normal smile. Nothing strange about it. But the second the words left her mouth, the woman in front of me turned and looked at me. Not at the cashier, at me. And she held my eyes just a second too long. Long enough for my stomach to drop. Long enough for me to forget where I was. Long enough for me to hear that freezer hum again in the back of my head. I left my groceries there, walked out, drove until dark, haven't stopped for long since. So if you're hearing this or reading this or whatever version of this reaches you first, believe me or don't. Say I'm crazy. Say I imagined it. Say fear made patterns out of nothing. I almost wish that were true. But I was there. I know what I saw in her kitchen. I know what was in that freezer. And I know the way she smiled when she asked me if I was her kind. I didn't answer her then. But the longer I stay out here, the less sure I am of what the answer is. Because she didn't try to stop me. She just watched me leave. Like she already knew I'd be carrying it with me. And maybe that's the worst part. Not that monsters are real. Not that powerful people hide things in beautiful houses, but that once you've seen what they really are, you start wondering what you are too. If you made it to the end, leave a comment and let me know you were here. Like the video before you head out, subscribe if you haven't, and join the membership if you want to support the channel the most.